a one-man business, it's more likely that people would prefer to partner with a a company that is an incorporated company. And of course, that results in limited growth potential. The second one is partnership. It's just, it's similar to sole proprietorship, other than the fact that it involves more than one person. It's owned by two or more people who share responsibilities and profits. They are liable for the debts of the business. Again, this is easy to form. It's easy to raise capital because people like us stop speaking, for example, or if they have different ways in which their minds are working as to how the business will go. It can impact. There was one there was a situation I had to advise on recently where somebody he had an idea how the business was supposed to run. It was supposed to be like I don't know if I'm about to, like a lounge, and they were supposed to have like snooker board services, etc. His partner wanted them to have food businesses, a food business, and just that impasse they ended up shutting down the place because they just couldn't agree on what they were supposed to do and what they were not supposed to do. So there's always potential for disagreements and direction. Okay, and the third, and which is quite popular, is limited liability company. And I'll try to explain what this is. So I like to say that it's a creation, a person that the law creates. We call it a legal fiction. So a limited liability company is a person in law. It's not a human person born by a woman. It's a person that is born by law, what we call a juristic person. So the law, upon incorporation, births a person. And that person, just like any other human person, enjoys certain benefits. This is an individual entity. This entity is responsible for the entity's business, right? So you incorporate Quick Fix Nigeria Limited. Quick Fix Nigeria Limited has all the benefits that you have as a human being under the law. You're able to buy properties in Quick Fix Nigeria Limited's name. You're able to sue in Quick Fix Nigeria Limited's name to be sued in Quick Fix Nigeria Limited's name. And what that does really, the benefits or the key features, separate legal entity from the owner of the company. It just simply means, unlike where it was just Adelere Simi and Co., right? Adelere Simi tailoring services, where I would have been responsible, where a customer ordered something and got something else, right? I would have been the one that maybe they would have come to pick to go to the police station, even though that is wrong. I would have been the one that would have been sued. But where I incorporate Adelere Simi Nigeria Limited, it's no longer Adelere Simi's business. It's Adelere Simi Nigeria Limited's business, right? That's the person who is responsible for any liabilities that arise under that contract. There are very rare instances where the law would, what we call, lift the veil. So there's something called the doctrine of lifting the veil, where the owners of a company or the directors or the directing minds of a company, because they understand the principle that the company is separate from the owners, they then begin to use the company to perpetrate fraud or any wrongdoing under the impression that, well, I can't be liable. So there are very rare instances where law would like to, let's even lift the veil. Let's see who's behind this company. Who are those people? And you see that a lot with money laundering cases, yeah, where you'd hear, for example, Desiani or some of those people, they have this company, XYZ Nigeria Limited, and you just see money going around through some of these companies, and it's so suspicious that the law has to say, well, even though ordinarily this company should not be responsible, but obviously we need to lift the veil. So how does that concern you? This is what I would recommend to most business owners, especially where you deal in a business that your prone to liability, where your business has grown a level that things might go wrong, and it's likely that you will be sued. It's always better to incorporate a limited liability company. And just from the name, it limits your liability to the extent of shares that you have committed. So for example, if you say, so you see if you fill any of those incorporation forms, they will ask, what share capital are you committing to, what percentage? So your liability, if you say, oh, I'm only contributing 1 million naira to this business, that's the share capital I'm contributing. In the event of the winding up or the death of that business, all your liability in this world is limited to that amount that you have committed to. It's subject to stricter regulations. And then people just have more confidence, investors or have more confidence dealing with incorporated companies. So it's easier to raise capital through the sale of shares. Oh no, sorry, that's public. I'm in public. Sorry. Yes, you can raise capital by issuing shares. You can sell your shares to me, for example. Maybe you have 40% ownership or 40% stake in this business, right? You can share you can raise capital by issuing shares. Okay, I think that's about it. The cons are it's more complex to set up and operate. You're subject to more, so for example, you have to pay more taxes. You're subject to Companies Income Tax Act. Companies Income Tax. And then you're also subject to more filing requirements. You have to file your annual returns with the Corporate Affairs Commission, etc. The last one, which might not apply to businesses here, of course, forgive me, there might be large businesses here, is the public limited company, which is more suitable for large-scale businesses. You're able to raise capital through public share offerings, and you see that's why a lot of people here, for example, can have in Dangote, can have shares in Fidelity Bank, in Apple, etc., because these are public limited liability companies, and they are able to issue their shares to the public. The last one, which is not exactly a business, but forms part of the business structure, is the what we know as ITs or NGOs, incorporated trustees, and non-governmental organizations. Again, like I had mentioned earlier, this, as the name suggests, is not for making profit. It is for, it's an organization or a structure that is set up to meet certain needs. You might say that you should be able to give to a community or to certain shared values. You know of people who live with sickle cell anemia, and you like to support them, or you want to be able to fund education. So this is one structure that you to do that. It's basically for social enterprises, and then the benefit of this is that you're not subject to a lot of requirements that normal businesses are subject to. You're exempted from certain kinds of taxes, etc. And so when you've decided what kind of structure I want to choose, based on certain factors that I must have discussed in the course of this presentation, I'll just go over them quickly. Liability. Do I want personal protection from business debts, right? Is this business so that even if anything happens, I can just, I can shut my eyes and pay it off and move on, right? The debts or the liability involved is not so much. If, for example, somebody orders a cake of 10,000 naira or 20,000 naira, and then something goes wrong with the cake, I can just say, I'm so sorry, please take a refund, or please take another cake, right? If your liability is not, your liability exposure is not so much, you definitely can consider a sole proprietorship or partnership, for example. But if you're somebody who works in a high liability business or environment, you know what to do. What structure provides the most tax advantages for your situation, right? Do I need to incorporate a do I need an incorporated trustee so that I don't have to pay taxes, but then I'm still able to, in quotes, conduct the business of helping people from Kogi State, attain university education, right? How easily can I raise capital? That would also determine what kind of structure that I choose. Is the business structure conducive to future expansion? How much control do I want to have in terms of decision making? That's one thing that happens when, for example, you incorporate a company and then you bring in shareholders. It can't be all about you anymore. You always have to defer to the board of directors. And then, of course, very important, what structure suits your industry needs? There are certain industries where you're mandated to certain kinds of, you're mandated to have a certain kind of structure. For example, I think there are some agricultural services, aviation services, insurance services. There are some people who play, even money lending services. There are some businesses in these categories where the law requires that you have an incorporated company, a limited liability company. The law won't stipulate your minimum share capital. And then, just as Gideon said, once you've decided what structure is best for your business, you then proceed to go to the Corporate Affairs Commission, register. Is it mandatory that I register? Not necessarily so, right? But there are benefits to registering with the CAC. And again, it also depends on what kind of business. If I want to run a business, so for example, let's assume my name is Vicky James. That's my name, without adding. So it's not a nickname. That's just my name. I don't have to, and I want to run my business in my name, Vicky James. I don't necessarily have to register my name, right? So the law only requires registration where you're using a name other than your name. But the challenge with that now is, even if I'm using my name and I say I have to register it, someone else can choose to use that name, right? So registration gives me the benefit of having my name, whatever that name is, whether it's my name as a person, my real name, or whether it's my business name. The law, by virtue of registration or incorporation, preserves your name. I chuckled because what actually kept me up all night is a matter I'm working on called a business name had been incorporated 23 years ago. But prior to the incorporation of this business name, there was an existing business with a similar name over 23 years ago. And so the business owner, this is a big business, I just can't mention the name, a very, very big business, actually a multinational who's doing business in Nigeria. And the first owner of the name went to court. The litigation dragged for a number of years. I think it started in 2015, actually. And then they've just gotten a decision from the Court of Appeal saying that indeed the first owner of the name should maintain the name, and then this business who has also used the name for 23 years has to change its name, right? And then, of course, we are planning to go to the Supreme Court to see how we can get that out of the way. The point I'm trying to make is that the law considers first in time. So no matter how big business is, if there's somebody, some small, whether it's just one small business in Ibadan, sorry if that came out wrong, but just some small business somewhere else, right, that has already started using that name before your big business started using that name, the person can go to court to say that, this name has to be struck out because I came first in time. So always register your business name early enough so that you're able to protect your business name. The next thing, I don't want to dwell too much on CAC because I think it's a subject we're quite familiar with. I think the only other thing I would like to mention is that for other businesses, apart from, so for a limited liability company, for example, you're required to have a memorandum and article of association, and then you're also required to fulfill certain minimum capital requirements. That's one of the complexities of having an incorporated company. or it's something that your lawyer can walk you through. It's something that you can actually read on the internet by yourself. Another important thing in terms of building a business with strong legal foundation, which is similar to what I said about registering your business name, is protecting your intellectual property. God blesses us with so many ideas every day. That's the beauty in God. Whether it's a song, whether it's an idea, an artwork or something, or whether it's the name of your business. You know how many times, I don't know about you, even me, that I'm not really into business. There are times I have business ideas, and I just write it down, or a business name. If there's anything that you think is unique to you, you think it's something that you've created, it's important that you protect it. The law has a way of helping you to, just like any other property that you have, whether it's land, whether it's a car, right, where you're able to register it in your name. It's my land, it's my house in Banana Island, it's mine. Nobody can come and enter my 5-bedroom apartment and, use it anyhow. It is yours, and so you must take the step to protect it. And there are different variations of intellectual property and protections that the law allow. If, for example, you're protecting a creative work, such as a book, a code, software, you can register your copyright. If you're protecting your business name or a logo, a slogan, or even a color that is unique to you. Like I like to say, we have if I say glow green, for example, something comes to mind. If I say MTN yellow, something comes to mind, right? If everywhere you go, something comes to mind. If I say truly the first, what's that? Yeah, thank you. You must protect that as well, whether it's your slogan, trade secrets, right? Whether it is how to cook, was it 200 bags of rice? How to cook it with a basi jollof rice, if there's something that you know how to do, if there's something that makes your business, there are some things that you take, if you know that game, there was one game that used to go on IG or social media, where they blindfold people and say, they ask them to sip things, and they ask them, what are you drinking? There's something that makes Pepsi. There's something that makes Coke. There's something that makes, what other drinks that we take. There's something unique to those things. And those, when you have something unique to your business like that, it's important that you protect it. It's important to protect your intellectual property because it stops other people from copying and profiting from your creation. It increases your business worth and attract investors. Actually, you can make money from protecting your intellectual property because, again, I see this in the kind of work that I do where a big brand is coming into Nigeria, but there's already an existing brand in Nigeria who's quite similar to this big brand. And they offer, right? In fact, you can even sue them. In some cases, the smaller brand sues, and then it brings them to the negotiating table and they say, okay, how much? And then you charge them something and sell your brand, again, depending on what you do and whether you're happy to sell, right? But if it's not registered, they will come in, use your brand, and that's it. Then it just provides a legal framework for the protection of your legal rights. How do you protect your IP? Speak to an IP lawyer, but you can register the Nigerian Copyright Commission, or depending on what category your IP asset falls into. Is it a copyright, trademarks, patent, or legal, or a trade secret? Okay, and I'll try to rush so that we can take pictures, so that we can take questions. I'm sorry. Another important thing in terms of building a strong legal foundation for your business, and this is where I like to dwell because this is what I deal with a lot, is drafting clear contracts and agreements. I think that this is the bane of most disputes that I won, where one party is under the impression that this is the service that will be provided. The other party who's providing the service is under the impression that, oh no, this is what I'm going to do. And then people are not clear. And that's in law, we call that consensus ad idem, which is the meeting of minds. There's supposed to be a uniformity in what you are thinking and what I'm thinking, right? Not that you are thinking that I'm, going to provide a particular color, whether it is plum or purple or wine. I think those are all in similar color family of colors, right? And you are thinking something else. So there has to be meeting of minds. And the only way we can ensure that there is a meeting of minds is that we put it in paper. We make it as clear as possible, right? Contracts are the backbone of any business relationship. Every single day, businesses enter into contracts. Whether it is contracts with their suppliers, whether it is contracts with people that they are providing services with, we enter into contracts, and it's important that we, as businesses, we reduce our risks and avoid misunderstanding as much as possible. Some common types of contracts are, please tell me, common contracts that you're aware of, especially in your field of work. Yes. Anybody? Employment contract, yes. I'm interested in that. Employment contracts, I discovered recently that in some employment contracts, you don't realize it. You sign up to a notice period of 3 months as against 1 month. That's weird. So it's important you read these things. Don't just get excited about the offer. Oh my God, these 3 times my salary. And then you realize that, there's somewhere hidden that you have to give 3 months notice instead of. And the thing with contracts is that the law in most cases would bow to contract. In most cases, there's something in law called sanctity of contracts, which is that the law and the courts must uphold the contracts voluntarily entered into by parties, whatever it is agreed to, even if it's the most ridiculous terms. I was telling, the last time I took this class, I was sharing about a case that I was working on where somebody, and in an employment contract, somebody had said that the employment would be for a period of 50 years. Yes. Very, very bad case. It's a big startup that has come apart now, and one of the founders, they had to sign some sort of employment contract. She was coming as a consultant, and then she's a lawyer, and she was able to put into that contract that the employment is for a period of 50 years. And, the way she structured it, the salary was to increase by a certain percentage every year. Now, the founders have broken up, unfortunately, and now she's at the NIC, the National Industrial Court, asking for ridiculous reliefs, right? So you need to read contracts. You'll be surprised the kind of things that you bind yourself or you are bound by just by signing certain contracts. Yes, any other form of contract. Yes, NDAs as well, quite popular and you need it as a business person actually to be sure that there's a level of protection for the information that is shared in your business. There are service agreements. There's one, lease agreements. We all enter into this every now and then. What are you agreeing with landlord or tenant, right? When I'm on the side of the tenant, there are certain clauses I put there to protect the tenant from increments, for example, to protect the tenant from being evicted. When I'm on the side of the landlord, I make sure that my tenant, okay, no, let me not tell you this. So, yeah, so there are certain things and that's why you always need a lawyer. Okay, I see that my time is up, and I'll just like to, there's quite a number of things, but I guess there are 3 things that I would like to emphasize in terms of, and I'll just give them for questions, in terms of building a strong legal foundation for your business. Number 1 is this thing that we talk about, incorporation, registration with the CAC or whatever regulator controls your business. It is so important, right? But it even starts with knowing your business. What field do I play in? Am I a fintech startup? If I'm a fintech startup, who are my regulators? Am I answerable to the CBN? Am I answerable to SEC? Am I answerable to, if I'm a healthcare startup or a edu-tech startup, what obligations do I have, right? So I need to know my business to even know what registrations and compliance requirements I'm supposed to comply with, right? So please get all your registrations, because it's better to comply than to be penalized. when you comply, it's a very low amount. For example, filing annual returns, it's not a lot. And I think it was during the tax class, one of the tax classes that we learned that it's not even if you're not money, you're able to just file that I'm not making money, or I didn't make any money. But when you don't file, you then become liable to penalties in future. So know your business and register what you need to register. The other thing is, and the two things are quite similar, record keeping. Document everything. Everything. It's difficult. I don't have calls with a client over the phone. You'll be surprised that tomorrow the client is going to come back to say, no, I didn't say that, right? Whether it is emails, whether it is WhatsApp chat, whether it is text messages, even if you had the conversation over the phone, go back and say, further to our earlier conversation, please can you confirm that you want 40 bags of rice, right? And then the person says yes. That's enforceable. But when you just have oral agreements and this happens a lot where parties have agreed a contract, but somebody, you didn't have follow-up conversations, either telephone conversations where, certain things change. And then the last thing, which is quite similar, which is like I said, the bane of most disputes is clear contract agreements. Clarify your termination clauses. Don't enter into a contract, a treaty, where you are stuck. Like, contracts could go so bad. Clarify interest. Clarify things like interest. You'll be surprised that you obtain a loan of 1 million naira from somebody, or whether it's a bank or whatever. Before you know it, interest has compounded and you are in debt. I guess those are the three things I would like to say. In terms of tips that I would like to give, I find this a lot. People, reach out to me sometimes. Say, can you help me review this contract? Can you help me? It's good to have like a retainer with your lawyer. I find that that's cheaper than. So, for example, if I would have reviewed or drafted a contract for 10 million naira, for example, and that's not to scare you away. Depends on the value of the transaction. If, for example, we agree that in the space of 1 year, right, you're likely going to have about 10 agreements or 5 agreements. We can agree a flat fee where you get a significant discount. Always have a lawyer on retainer. That's also what I'm trying to say, so that you can always just call the lawyer. They've just called me now. Those people have said that I have to, even though we had agreed that my delivery date for the service was December, they've said that it has to be November now. What do I do? Retainers actually help. You have like on the go legal services, whether it's advice or whether it's, of course, yeah. And then the other thing is dispute avoidance and resolution. Always try to have policies in place, especially in your contracts, to reduce disputes as much as possible, right? And then in this situation, we always say, we always say that in many cases, disputes will always arise. So what happens where a dispute arises? Do you just put arbitration? And hopefully one day we get to discuss, some dispute resolution mechanisms. Do we just put, what is arbitration? Do I just sign and agree that I agree to arbitration in the Court of International Arbitration, and then I'm hearing fees in thousands of USD, and now I'm not able to defend suit, and then the claimant is able to go without me? Is this the kind of dispute where I should resolve litigation? Am I going to go and get stuck in court for XYZ number of years, right? Should we do mediation? Should we go to court of the multi-door court, right? Should we do negotiation? So these are some of the things that you need to consider in terms of contract and dealing with people. Have refund policies, and be sure, okay, this is the last thing I'll say and I'll keep quiet. When contracting with people, when engaging with people, right, it's one thing to say that this is my policy. It's another thing for the law to say that, well, this is the law. I said earlier that the law would usually bow to contracts, but there are a few instances where you cannot contract outside the law. I hope it's confusing. There are a few instances where the law for the protection of a party would would not allow contracts to supersede the law. So you need to be familiar with some of those. So for example, maybe for public policy considerations, or for, unfortunately, I can't think of any good eggs now, right? But say that. Yes, exactly. In the interest of national security, etc. You cannot contract. Yeah, there are some illegal contracts. You cannot contract to, bring in bombs into Nigeria and then go to court to enforce it, for example. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me. I think I've been able to touch on some of the key things that are important in terms of building a legal foundation for your business. I'll appreciate questions at this time, or questions, because there's quite a number of lawyers in the room, actually. We have, yeah. Okay.
I just want to quickly clarify. Are you saying that notice period shouldn't exceed one month daily? Because there are people who do full.
That you can. So, for example, you might just think that notice period is 1 month. Notice period is 1 month. Meanwhile, your agreement actually says 3 months. That's allowed in some places. That's popular in some places, actually. But at least you want to be sure that you know what you are going into. And if you know, for example, you can negotiate at the point of entry to say, no, I can't agree to this. Let's do 2 months, or let's do, so it's not, the law does not, it's not wrong under the law. It's just that you need to know what you're signing before you get into it. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for listening.